Now, welcome to another edition of Let's Talk Some Star Wars, where this week we'll be taking a look at the results of the poll that asked the question, how excited are you right now, before learning too many details, about the upcoming Cassian Andor series, which will be on Disney+. As usual then, I'll also be reading and responding to some of your comments, as well as showing off all the great artwork that was sent in to me. And if you have something you'd like to share, do send it to me at the email address in the description below. Okay, so let's just get right to the results, where we'll see that only 9% of those who voted said they were very excited and would absolutely watch it. 38% then said they were somewhat excited and would most likely watch it. 17% are not all that excited and unlikely to watch, while 12% don't care and don't plan to watch at all. There was then another 24% who said they didn't seem to remember who Cassian was and or didn't know this show was coming. And before getting to what you all had to say in the comments, and to stop someone or maybe many someones from bringing it up in the comments to this video, I will throw out my usual disclaimer that no, this does not necessarily reflect how the whole fanbase feels about this upcoming show. However, I will say that I do think these results would actually closely reflect the broader view of this show, where there is both a good amount of excitement from some fans, yet also a fair amount of apathy from others, or those who are just wondering or trying to remember who this character even is. And with that said, let's get to your comments now, starting as we always do with the top rated comment, which this time came to us from Lee Perry, who said, "I wish there was an option for not very excited but will try it out. I couldn't care less about Cassian Andor. Mind you, I loved Rogue One, but it feels like there's no need to further explore those characters. That said, Disney Plus Star Wars has been, beyond the previously mentioned excellent Rogue One, the only decent Star Wars we've gotten since the mouse took over, so I'll give it a try even though my preliminary excitement is very, very low." And you know, this was again one of those times that I realized, like moments after posting the poll and reading the initial comments, that maybe the most popular option people would have picked wasn't an option I had included, which is that maybe you're not so excited for this show, but you're going to still give it a chance because it's Star Wars or The Mandalorian gave you some hope for the future. And oddly enough, that's kind of the camp I find myself in, because I wouldn't say I'm all that excited for this show in particular, but I am excited for more Star Wars shows after what they pulled off with The Mandalorian. I mean, love or hate the sequel trilogy or fall somewhere in between, I don't think anyone will argue against the fact that it was divisive and left a lot of fans disappointed for one reason or another. And so it turns out that The Mandalorian didn't just save Baby Yoda, I think he or the show saved or stopped a lot of fans from jumping ship and never ever looking back. Because imagine if that show hadn't come out when it did, which was about a month before Episode 9 came out. In fact, just remove it from the equation altogether, and pretend Cassian, coming out maybe later this year, though it'll probably be early next year, was going to be the first Disney Plus series. How much excitement would there be for that? But because we already got The Mandalorian, because it was great, there are a lot of people who will now give this show a chance who otherwise never would have. Okay, let's now move on to this comment from George Aylard, who said, "Ahsoka, Yoda, the Old Republic, Qui-Gon Jinn, Count Dooku, Luke from episodes 6 to 7, nah. That one guy who moped around the rebellion before dying a forgettable death, yeah, that's the most interesting Star Wars story there is to tell." Then there's this comment from Darling Devil Luke, who said, "I'm sorry, but does anyone really care that much about Cassian? Because I don't think he was that popular in Rogue One. So why exactly is he getting a series when we could instead get something else that be more interesting, like, I don't know, maybe the Old Republic?" Then there's this comment from CMD, who said, "This is exactly what's wrong with Disney Star Wars. They've got a galaxy and more worth of stories over the course of thousands of years, spanning countless civilizations, and all we get is another spin-off." We also had this comment from Clarissa Quinn, who said, "I loved Cassian Andor in Rogue One. He was a great character that was well written with a great arc and had a great actor to portray him. So what else is there to tell about him? We already know he had a hard life, fighting from a young age. I don't feel like we need to explore that any further." Finally, in this little group of comments, we had this one from Coach Chris Geeked, who said, "Not very excited, but of course I'm watching it. Honestly, I feel like the time and effort should be spent on a different series or films." Okay, so I personally think Cassian was a fine character in Rogue One. Not exactly the most memorable, but not totally forgettable either. But if you gave me a list of every single Star Wars character we'd ever gotten, including some from the EU that could or should be brought into the new canon, and asked me to rank them according to how interested I'd be in getting a show about them, being honest, I don't think Cassian makes my top 50, probably not even my top 100. And that's not so much meant to be a slight against the character, as much as it's meant to say there are a lot of great characters in Star Wars right now to explore, to say nothing of brand new ones they could create, and it's just an odd choice to go with him. One of my only guesses as to why a Cassian Andor show is because Diego Luna, who plays the character, is a huge, huge Star Wars fan, and he was eager to do this. And since he's also a hell of an actor, I do have hope for this show, don't get me wrong. I do believe that when all is said and done, Cassian could become a truly fantastic character overall, and in reality, he better become that since they're devoting an entire show to him. Okay, moving on now, we have this comment from Alex Green who said, even with Disney Plus, I'm not going to consciously try to watch this series. It's a character who we've seen die and who doesn't stand out among the plethora of other characters in this universe who would have been interesting to see fleshed out more, or even just to follow more. I feel like episodic stories of Vader hunting random Jedi would be more interesting than the life of Cassian Andor. Hell, that series could follow the stormtroopers under Vader as the main characters, giving us insight to their lives, to the lives of average stormtroopers. A rebel before the original trilogy who takes no part in the original trilogy just isn't as compelling as before, especially when their end is already known. And I think you touch on one of the biggest problems with Disney Star Wars. They're utterly lacking in unique or different ideas. The life of a stormtrooper or stormtroopers under Darth Vader having to grapple with watching their boss hunt down and destroy what's left of the Jedi, when maybe as a kid one of them or some of them remember hearing stories of the heroic Jedi from the past from their parents, and or saw their exploits on the HoloNet during the Clone Wars. That's something completely different from anything we've seen before. Plus, it lets you put Vader into a show without him being the main character, and including him in every single episode, and maybe ending up overusing him a bit. And don't get me wrong here, I love The Mandalorian, and I'm in no way upset or regretful that that's the show we're getting, but it isn't the most unique idea ever. Yes, Baby Yoda adds a spin that I don't think any of us ever saw coming, and it does make it something different from what we all expected, but I'm not sure what they can really do with a show about Cassian that's going to be something truly different. But I'd love to be proven wrong, and maybe our next comment from Grievous444 is onto something. At first I didn't care at all, but this could flesh out his character more and show us the dark side of the Rebel Alliance. The most interesting thing about him was when he said he did horrible things in the name of the Rebel Alliance. And of course the very first time we see Cassian Andor, which is early in Rogue One, he's doing something extremely shady, to put it mildly, and shooting his informant in the back because he's wounded and won't be able to get away from the Empire. And that's the first time, in the movies at least, and pretty much anywhere really, that we see the rebellion doing anything that calls into question that they're just the good guys of the story and their hands are all squeaky clean. And so maybe there is something here worth exploring. Moving right along, our next comment then comes to us from Rook's channel, who said, I would rather have an Agent Kallus show over Cassian Andor. Andor's story was basically complete and told in Rogue One, and doesn't need to be explored in my opinion. Give me something else that is a lot more exciting like Kallus, or hell, an Inquisitor storyline than a lone rebel. We get it in Rebels, and in the Rogue One movie, I'm already tired of focusing on the Rebels. We also had this comment from Mr. Zia Tradian, who said, prediction, Hera, Chopper, Rex, and the Ghost are all gonna make cameos just like in Rogue One, or they're gonna play a role in one of the episodes. Okay, so first of all here, I'd love to see an episode of the series include Agent Kallus before or after he defects, or that maybe he's even a main character in the show, someone Cassian works with a lot because of Kallus's intimate knowledge of the Empire. Either way, I think we'll see some crossover with the show Rebels, or see characters from that show appear in the series. There's even a strong possibility we could see Ahsoka Tano, since she was the first Fulcrum agent, and Cassian also becomes one. Hell, she may even be the one who recruits him. Though there's also a chance that we won't actually see Ahsoka, as much as we'll see Cassian speaking to a cloaked and hooded figure with a muffled voice that we will know is her, much like when Hera talked to her in Rebels. Okay, next up here we have this comment from Sven Verbrusi, who said, kill Han Solo off, then make a movie about him. Kill Cassian Andor off, then make a series about him. That's not how it works. Then we had this comment from Situ Dien, who said, no one wanted a Solo movie, same reason no one wants a Cassian show. And as I've said many times before, Han Solo's introduction in A New Hope is one of the best intros I've ever seen anywhere. Shooting Greedo, then getting up and casually tossing a coin to the bartender, apologizing for the mess, tells us everything we need to know about the character. And though it may be interesting to know how he became like that, it's more interesting to watch the character become something more over the course of 3 movies, which Han of course does. Which is part of the reason why I think the Solo movie did so poorly at the box office. No one cared about his past. And I think you may run into a bit of the same problem with this show. Cassian also has a really good introduction. As I talked about before, he shoots his informant in the back and we immediately get a great idea of what type of character or guy this is. Yet by the end of the movie, much like Han, he changes. And if people weren't interested to see how Han Solo of all characters became the way he is, I don't know if they'll care to learn the same about Cassian. Though there's every chance this show won't really deal with his backstory so much, as it will just deal with all the things he does while in the rebellion or for the cause. Okay, let's get to just a few more comments here, starting with this one from Your Soul's Mate, who said, very excited. Apart from just being excited for more Star Wars and more K2SO, who is my favorite droid, I'm looking forward to seeing a darker side of the Rebels. We got a bit of it in the books, but live-action Star Wars has always portrayed the Rebels as the moral good guys until Rogue One, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of that gray area, terrorist-leaning side. On a side note, it does make me sad that so many people don't even want to watch it. Then we had this comment from Sean, who simply said, you had me at K2SO, but everything else, eh. Then this comment from Earl Smith, who said, if it was a Chirrut Imwe series, I'd be more excited. And finally, this comment from E-Tan, who said, this show honestly has a 50-50 shot of either working brilliantly or flopping so bad it's memorable. Either way, it sounds like an enjoyable experience. And I tend to agree with you. I could either see them pulling off a very pleasant surprise, and this show ends up being great, and we'll all wonder why we ever doubted, or it'll completely miss and people will see it as a huge waste when there were so many other characters and or time periods to explore. And though I hope it turns out to be the former, I could see it turning into the latter. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Now it's your turn to tell me how excited you are, or are not, for the Cassian Andor series, or to tell me what you thought of what I or anyone else had to say in this video. As for the next poll, I think it might be interesting to do some that rank the characters themselves, which is kind of what I was talking about before, where I didn't think Cassian would crack the top 50 most interesting characters. And so maybe I'll start a bit of a new series, a bit separate from these Let's Talk Some Star Wars videos, but with the same format, where we rank the characters, and have other polls that continue to ask other questions. So let me know in the comments below what you think about that idea, or leave a comment about this video. Either way, let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.